Welcome to Eureka Epoch, bringing Urantia book insights to life through storytelling, visuals, and inspired exploration. Subscribe for more.
Long before the birth of Christ, a wave of spiritual energy moved quietly but powerfully across Asia. Carried by the Salem missionaries, teachers descended from the order of Melchizedek, this sacred current bore with it the simple but mighty truth of the Most High God, that salvation comes through faith. These messengers, though touched by the traditions and philosophies of the lands they passed through, did not falter in their mission. Entrusted with the teachings of Melchizedek, they crossed the vast Eurasian continent, eventually reaching the ancient civilization of China sometime around the middle of the second millennium before Christ. There, at a place called Fuch, they established their base, a spiritual outpost that would stand for over 100 years. It was here they trained Chinese teachers, who then fanned out across the lands of the Yellow Race, bearing the torch of divine truth. Their arrival deeply influenced what would later emerge as the earliest form of Taoism, a far cry from the Taoism of later centuries. This early spiritual movement was a fusion of three great streams of thought: the lingering monotheistic faith of Singlangton and Shangti, the God of Heaven, the Salemite gospel of a creator who responds to sincere faith, and the abstract ideals of the Indian Brahman absolute, carried eastward by Vedic missionaries. This spiritual blend quietly penetrated Chinese thought, giving rise to a proto-Taoism that would leave its mark not only in China, but also in Japan, where it would become the root of what is known today as Shinto. Even in distant lands, the memory of Melchizedek's incarnation lingered, evidence that the name of God was not forgotten. But the truth did not remain pure. Over time, the Salem message became entangled with rising ancestor worship. Though the Chinese had long since freed themselves from the tyranny of priestcraft, emerging from barbarism earlier than many, they eventually slipped into the equally confining grip of tradition, revering the dead rather than progressing in spiritual understanding. China's early strength lay in its freedom from fear of gods and spirits, yet its stagnation came from its failure to move beyond ancestor reverence. Still, the Salemites had not labored in vain. Upon their spiritual groundwork, the golden age of Chinese philosophy would be built. In the 6th century before Christ, during a rare moment of global spiritual quickening, two figures would rise, Lao Tse and Confucius. Lao Tse, a man of mystical insight, revived the spirit of the Salem teachings. He spoke of the Tao, the eternal way, as the supreme creator, the one first cause. To Lao, existence flowed from the absolute. From the Tao came unity, from unity came duality, and from duality arose the Trinity, the primal source of all reality. His teachings resonated with deep spiritual understanding: faith as the simplicity of a child, goodness that returns even for evil, and the eternal victory of the non-coercive will of God. He envisioned the divine not as a striving force, but as an eternal presence, gentle, patient, and victorious. He taught that the one who truly possesses truth does not hoard it, but gives it freely, for that is the nature of divine realization. Sadly, much of Lao Tse's original vision was later distorted. His teaching of non-resistance devolved into passivity. Yet at the heart of his doctrine remained a beacon, that faith in the absolute God generates the divine energy by which the world may be transformed. Meanwhile, Confucius, Lao's contemporary, turned his focus toward order and morality. Drawing from the ethical traditions of the Chinese past and touched faintly by the Salem echo, Confucius sought to elevate society through righteous living. He gathered the wisdom of earlier philosophers, striving not to invent, but to preserve and systematize. Where Lao reached upward toward heaven, Confucius looked outward to civilization. His teachings replaced the magical with the moral, suggesting that the earthly path should mirror the celestial pattern. Yet in exalting order, Confucius forged a new kind of rigidity, one that, while preserving tradition, dampened the spirit of innovation and discovery. Still, his influence endured. For centuries, his words would serve as the moral backbone of Chinese society, even as the spirit of living truth struggled to breathe beneath the weight of ritual. Efforts to revive the deeper spiritual current met with resistance. Mo Ti, a later teacher, preached a love rooted in God, Not just duty, but he was rejected. And as centuries passed, both Lao Tse and Confucius were deified by their followers. The truths they taught were buried beneath superstition, ritual, and fear. The vibrant spiritual inheritance of early China degenerated into a confused theology of dragons, demons, and ancestor ghosts. Thus, a civilization that once led the world in wisdom and spirit began to fall behind. For in neglecting the living quest for God consciousness, the Chinese people, like so many others, forgot that true progress, whether personal or planetary, springs not from tradition alone, but from a living faith in the eternal.